A billionaire known for rockets and robots, brought to his knees by a stray cat? He had conquered Mars, revolutionized cars, but nothing prepared Elon Musk for the fragile creature that appeared one cold morning and refused to leave. What happened next would shatter his routine and reveal a side of him the world never saw. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. It was a gray, overcast morning when Elon Musk stepped out of his car and into the brisk air outside the SpaceX headquarters. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds, as if mirroring the weight pressing down on his shoulders. His suit was crisp, but his posture was tired, slightly hunched from weeks of tension, of meetings that never ended, of problems that multiplied faster than solutions. Tesla was in the middle of a production overhaul. Neuralink had hit another regulatory wall. And at SpaceX, deadlines loomed for a rocket test that could make or break months of work. He had barely slept. His mind spun with numbers, timelines, investor calls. He didn't have room for anything else. Not today. As he walked toward the building, phone in one hand, his other hand ran briefly through his hair in frustration. Then he stopped. Something shifted in the corner of his vision. Across the sidewalk, near a drain pipe by the fence, a pair of eyes watched him, small, wide, and unblinking. A thin, stray cat, its fur matted and speckled with grime, crouched silently against the wall. Elon stared at it for a moment, brow furrowed. The cat didn't move. It didn't flinch. It just watched. He exhaled, half a sigh, half a mutter. "Not today," he said quietly, shaking his head and turning back toward the entrance. But the cat didn't walk away. It simply stood, still and waiting, as if it knew something Elon didn't. Something was beginning, and it wasn't finished yet. Elon was just a few steps from the entrance when he heard it, the faintest sound of movement behind him, soft, careful steps that didn't belong in the typical rush of a Monday morning. He paused, turned his head slightly and looked over his shoulder. There, about 10 feet back, was the same stray cat. It hadn't wandered off like he expected. Instead, it was following him. Not aggressively, not playfully, just following, keeping its distance, eyes locked on him with quiet intensity. He blinked, surprised. Most animals would have run by now. Most would have given up when ignored. But this one hadn't. It stayed, watching him like it was waiting for something. He hesitated. Elon wasn't the kind of man who made a habit of stopping on the sidewalk for strays. He had teams to lead, launches to prepare, deadlines chasing him down. But something about the cat's stillness, its calm persistence, made him pause. Without thinking, he crouched down and extended a hand, palm open, fingers relaxed. The cat didn't move at first. Then, slowly, cautiously, it padded forward, inch by inch, until it reached his hand. It sniffed once, then gently rubbed its head against his fingers. A warmth spread through him. Not just the warmth of the animal's fur, but something deeper. For a moment, the spinning of the world seemed to quiet. The emails, the charts, the arguments, all of it faded as he focused on the delicate movement of the cat brushing against him. It wasn't much, just a fleeting moment of connection, but it felt real. He let his hand linger there for a second longer, then stood up. The cat sat back, watching him again. Elon gave it a small nod and walked toward the building, the pressure of the day already beginning to rebuild in his chest. He didn't look back, but the cat stayed, unmoving, waiting, as if it knew it wasn't the end of something, it was the beginning. Hours passed. The day dragged on, with meetings stacked back to back, decisions that felt like tightropes, and conversations that left Elon more drained than focused. By the time the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the SpaceX campus, he was running on fumes. He stepped through the main doors, loosening his tie and exhaling. The moment his shoes hit the concrete outside, he stopped. The cat, still sitting there, right by the door, exactly where he'd left it that morning. Elon froze. He wasn't sure what stunned him more, the loyalty, the patience, or the simple fact that no one else had chased it away. It looked up at him, eyes soft but unwavering, as if it had never doubted he would return. He walked toward it slowly. When he crouched down again, the cat didn't hesitate this time. It padded up, purring gently, and rubbed its head against his leg. Elon felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Something tender. Without really thinking, he scooped the cat up in his arms. It didn't resist. It simply settled into him, warm and light, as though it had always belonged there. In the car, it curled into the passenger seat like it knew the way home. That night, after setting out a dish of water and an old towel for a bed, Elon sat at his desk to finish up a few tasks. The cat leapt onto the desk and curled up beside his laptop, its quiet purring filling the room like a lullaby. Elon glanced at it more than once. He found himself smiling. There was something grounding about its presence, simple, steady, unexpected. He hadn't planned on bringing it home, hadn't planned on letting it stay, but as he worked late into the night, the cat remained curled at his side, peaceful, content, unwavering. And for reasons he couldn't quite explain, Elon didn't ask it to leave. He didn't name it, not yet, but something told him this wasn't a temporary arrangement. Something had shifted, something he hadn't even known was missing, had quietly returned. By the end of the week, Elon had given the cat a name, Orbit. It felt fitting, somehow. A small body pulled into his life by some invisible force now circling his world in quiet, comforting patterns. What began as a curious encounter outside the SpaceX door quickly became a daily rhythm. Each morning, as Elon grabbed his keys and opened the front door, Orbit was already there, perched near the doormat, tail curled neatly around its paws, as if ready to send him off into the day. Each evening, without fail, the cat would be waiting again, seated near the gate or lounging just inside, ears twitching at the sound of Elon's car pulling in. It didn't take long for Elon to realize how much those moments mattered. Orbit didn't ask anything of him, didn't demand attention or approval, but its presence was calming. In the middle of a schedule packed with launches, deadlines, and relentless pressure, that simple companionship became something he cherished more than he expected. There were nights when he'd catch himself smiling before even opening the door, already picturing Orbit's quiet greeting. And there were mornings when he moved just a little slower, taking a moment to scratch behind the cat's ears before heading out. His children adored Orbit. Whenever they visited, the cat would weave between their legs, playful and gentle, soaking up every bit of affection. Even Elon's friends noticed a change. "You seem lighter," one had said over coffee, "less on edge." Maybe he was. Maybe in some strange way this stray had brought gravity back to his life, grounding him in the present. He didn't talk about it much. He still made his public appearances, still led board meetings and engineering reviews with sharp focus. But behind closed doors, the silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. Orbit would curl up beside him during late-night planning sessions, its soft purr the only sound in the room, and Elon would find himself breathing a little easier. Then, one evening, that rhythm broke. Elon came home just after sunset, briefcase in hand, expecting to see that familiar silhouette by the gate. But Orbit wasn't there. He called out softly, waited. Nothing. A flicker of unease crept in. He shook it off. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Orbit had never missed a greeting. And suddenly, the quiet felt too quiet. Elon stepped inside, expecting to hear the familiar sound of soft paws padding across the hardwood, or to see Orbit lounging by the window, as he often did in the late afternoons. But the house was still, quiet, He set down his briefcase and called out, his voice calm at first. "Orbit? Hey, buddy?" Nothing. Not a sound. Not a shuffle. He walked through each room, checking corners, under tables, behind curtains. His tone shifted as the minutes stretched. "Orbit, where are you?" Still nothing. Panic hadn't set in yet, but unease was growing. He checked the back door. It was shut, just like he'd left it. Windows were locked, no signs of escape. Still, the cat was gone. Then a memory hit him, sharper than he expected. The first time Orbit had disappeared. It had been just a few weeks after bringing him home. A moment of inattention, a back gate left open. Orbit had wandered out, and hours later, Elon found him injured near the street, his small body trembling, blood on his paw. That incident had shaken him more than he ever admitted, even to himself. Now that same feeling gripped his chest. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat and rushed out into the neighborhood. It was already dark. Streetlights cast long shadows over the sidewalks. He walked fast at first, then broke into a jog, eyes scanning bushes, porches, driveways. Every sound made him turn his head. Nothing. He moved further down the block, heart pounding. He called again, louder this time, voice cracking. Or then, faintly, a sound. A meow. Weak, barely audible. He stopped and listened again. Another meow, coming from an alley between two houses a few doors down. He ran toward it, ducking between trash cans and low-hanging branches. There, beneath an old bench, was Orbit. The cat was lying on its side, trembling, one leg bent at an unnatural angle. Elon dropped to his knees. "It's okay, buddy. I've got you," he whispered, voice shaking. He scooped the cat up gently, holding it against his chest. Orbit didn't resist. Its breathing was shallow, body limp. The drive to the emergency vet felt endless. Every red light, every slow car in front of him pushed his nerves closer to the edge. When he arrived, he rushed through the doors, shouting for help. A tech took Orbit from his arms, and Elon stood frozen for a moment, hands empty, heart racing. He paced the waiting room. Every tick of the clock felt like a punch to the gut. His mind, usually sharp and composed, couldn't focus. All he could see was that fragile body under the bench. He sat, stood, paced again. Time blurred. Finally, a vet stepped into the room. She looked tired, her expression unreadable. Elon stood immediately, chest tight. The vet exhaled, walking toward him slowly. He braced himself, gripping the edge of the chair. The world seemed to quiet around him. She looked him in the eyes, voice low, steady. "Elon, we did everything we could." And then she paused. The vet's eyes softened as she spoke. "He made it through. The surgery went well. Orbit's a tough little guy." The words hit Elon like a tidal wave. Relief flooded his chest, and for a brief moment he closed his eyes, allowing himself to breathe again. He hadn't realized how tightly he'd been holding everything in. The weight, the fear, the helplessness. It all lifted in an instant. He nodded, barely managing to whisper, "Thank you." The next few days were a blur of checkups, medications, and quiet hours by Orbit's side. Elon cleared his schedule, something he rarely ever did, refusing to leave the cat alone. At home, he prepared a soft bed in the corner of his office, complete with warm blankets and a low light to keep the room calm. Orbit could barely move, but each time Elon sat beside him, the cat would purr faintly, its eyes flickering with quiet trust. Elon didn't delegate the care. He gave the medications himself. He cleaned the stitches, held Orbit gently when the pain seemed to spike. At night, when the house was still, he'd sit on the floor and talk to the cat in hushed tones, processing thoughts he didn't even realize he'd buried. The silence became sacred. It wasn't just healing for Orbit, it was healing for him. Somewhere in those long, slow days, Elon realized the truth. Orbit hadn't just become part of his home, he'd become part of his heart. In the whirlwind of inventions and industries, Elon had forgotten what it meant to be still, to care for something fragile and dependent, to feel needed in a way that had nothing to do with success. To a few close friends, he began opening up. Over dinner one evening, he quietly said, "I used to think I needed Mars. Turns out, I needed a cat." They laughed at first, thinking he was joking, but when they saw the look in his eyes, they knew he meant every word. Orbit had done more than survive. He had awakened something in Elon, something deeper than intellect or ambition, a stillness, a presence, a kind of peace that couldn't be engineered. The house no longer felt like a showroom of efficiency. It felt like a home. And Elon, for the first time in years, felt like more than just a CEO. He felt human. But life, in its unpredictable rhythm, wasn't done testing him. The calm he had found was about to be shaken once more. As the weeks turned into months, Elon and Orbit settled into a new kind of rhythm, one marked not by ambition but by presence. Orbit had recovered fully. He returned to his old habits, sitting by the door in the mornings and curling beside Elon's laptop at night. Elon, in turn, found himself reshaping his days around the cat's simple routines. He'd pause more often, listen more closely. Even his staff noticed he seemed different, more grounded, less abrupt. The man who once measured time in launch windows and market cycles was now, occasionally, found watching the sunset with a cat in his lap. But then came the morning that broke the pattern. Elon woke early, as usual, ready to face another packed day. He stepped into the hallway, expecting to see Orbit waiting near the door, tail flicking with quiet excitement. But there was no sign of him. He called out. Nothing. He checked the kitchen, the study, under the furniture. The usual spots were empty. He walked through the house once, then twice, a creeping tension growing with every unanswered call. By midday, he'd contacted his security team, asked the house staff if they'd seen anything. No one had. Orbit was simply gone. Days passed. Elon searched every nearby street, alley, and bush. He posted alerts, left out food, drove slowly through the neighborhood in the evenings, but Orbit never appeared, and something inside Elon began to unravel. He hadn't expected to feel this kind of void. Not for a cat. But the absence was undeniable. The house felt quieter, colder. The small moments, the sound of soft paws, the low purring during late-night work sessions were gone, and their absence echoed louder than he thought possible. He kept his public face steady. At board meetings, he delivered updates with the same precision. In interviews, he gave nothing away. But at night, the weight returned. He'd sit in his study, stare at the door, and feel the ache of not knowing. He'd allowed himself to care, and now he felt foolish for how much it hurt. He questioned if he'd been careless. Had he overlooked something, missed a sign? Had Orbit left because he'd felt neglected? Elon, the man who could troubleshoot rockets and predict market trends, found himself haunted by one tiny life he couldn't control. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped low and the world softened into quiet, Elon stepped out onto the porch. The wind was cool, the sky tinged with gold. And just as he sat down, he heard it. A sound so faint he almost didn't believe it at first. A meow. Familiar, fragile, real. Elon froze. He leaned forward, heart thudding in his chest, eyes scanning the shadows at the edge of the porch. The meow came again. Barely a whisper, but unmistakable. Then, slowly from beneath a hedge, a small shape emerged. Orbit. Limping. Thin, fur ruffled and dirty, but alive. Elon dropped to his knees. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Oh, Orbit." Tears welled in his eyes before he could stop them. He reached out gently, and Orbit dragged himself forward, collapsing into his arms with a weak purr. Elon held him close, burying his face into the cat's fur, the sound of his own sobs breaking the silence. Relief, guilt, gratitude, they all surged at once. He didn't care who saw. In that moment, nothing else mattered. From that day forward, everything changed. No longer would Orbit be a background presence in Elon's life. He became the center of it in ways that surprised even Elon. He canceled a day of meetings just to sit with him. A press interview was rescheduled because Orbit had a checkup. His assistants were puzzled, but they quickly learned. Nothing came before the cat. Not anymore. Elon began carving out intentional time, not only for Orbit, but for the people he loved. He slowed down, listened more. Even in high-pressure meetings, he was softer around the edges, more patient, more human. His kids noticed first. "You're not always thinking about rockets anymore," one of them joked. His friends smiled more freely around him, and his staff commented on how the workplace felt lighter. He had spent so much of his life chasing distant dreams, colonizing Mars, building the future, pushing the limits of what was possible. But now, in the quiet moments with Orbit curled up beside him, he realized something profound. True success wasn't measured in inventions or accolades. It was measured in presence, in kindness, in the quiet courage of caring deeply for another life. Orbit had taught him that, not through grand gestures but through small, consistent ones, through loyalty, through trust, through simply being there. And Elon responded in kind. Each morning he'd wake and check to see where Orbit had chosen to sleep that night. Each evening he'd run his fingers along the cat's soft fur, grateful for another day together. His perspective had shifted. The sky was still vast, the stars still called to him. But now he understood that the most meaningful journeys often begin right at your doorstep. He once sought to colonize the stars, but found his greatest discovery in a small, stray cat. Life often moves fast. We chase goals, solve problems, and rush through days packed with responsibilities. But sometimes, something small enters our path and quietly asks us to pause. For Elon Musk, it wasn't a business opportunity or a technological breakthrough that softened his heart. It was a stray cat. A fragile, unexpected companion who reminded him that even the busiest life has room for grace, tenderness, and connection. Maybe you've had a moment like that too. A small gesture from a stranger, a quiet smile from a loved one, a pet that seemed to understand more than words ever could. These aren't just passing experiences. They're invitations. Reminders that our true strength isn't only in what we achieve, but in how we care. You don't have to change the world to make a difference. Sometimes, opening your door to something small, something vulnerable, can transform your world from the inside out. Whether it's a neighbor you haven't spoken to in a while, a friend going through a hard time, or a stray animal needing warmth and safety, the chance to show compassion is always within reach. So take a moment, slow down, look around. Ask yourself, where can I create space for kindness today? And if stories like this move you, if they help you reflect on what really matters, on what it means to be human, we invite you to stay connected with us. Subscribe for more stories that shine a light on faith, hope, and the quiet power of love. Because sometimes the smallest creatures bring us the biggest lessons.